Hello, 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 and welcome, everyone, to a Power to Fly Chat and Learn. My name is Hunter. My pronouns are he, they, and I am so excited to have you here. First, before we jump into today's topic, let's just do a little bit of housekeeping. Feel free to turn on your cameras. You can participate. It's a great way to connect with myself and the speakers and the other folks on the call today. So it's a great way to network. We highly encourage you to do so. Thank you. Yes. Hello, beautiful people. Looking good. Hello. Also, because you just did that, you get a bonus today. An additional speaker is Francis, here today to share with you. If you're a dog lover, this dog loves you. Okay, we are recording. So feel free to check out the rewatch link that we'll send out in a few days, and it'll also be on our YouTube channel. This one's Francis, by the way. And you can write in the chat, say hello to myself or Francis or our speaker, Mary, who I'm about to introduce, and let us know your thoughts. Where are you calling in from? Is it 120 degrees where you are? It was for me a few days ago, but now it's a cool 80. Lovely. So please feel free to participate in the chat. Okay, without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce today's speaker. Mary Ostafi is passionate about helping leaders reach their full potential and accelerate growth and fulfillment in all areas of their lives. She has dedicated her career to promoting positive social and environmental change by driving large-scale initiatives that create a collective impact, so important in these times. As an executive coach, Mary focuses on guiding leaders and organizations that share her commitment to advancing humanity through conscious leadership. So please give a digital round of applause to Mary. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you so much, Hunter. Thank you for having me here. It's so good to be with all of you today.
Oh, it's so good to be with you and all of our speakers, our participants today. And it's such a great topic, so important that we're going to be jumping into today. So we're going beyond burnout, the path to renewal, which I just love this topic. And we were chatting a little bit before we went live, how it's so nice that we're often talking about just when we're in the state of burnout, and that is a topic that we will get into, but we're also going to be focusing on renewal. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm going to be taking notes as well, because I think if we're on the call, we've all been there. And Mary, I know you have, so I'd love to hear about your experience with burnout. What was that like? What got you there? Were there symptoms coming on for it, or were you just suddenly in it? So I'd love to hear about your relationship with burnout and, ways that you grew from it as well.
Yeah, thanks, Hunter. And I'm good friends with burnout. A very close relationship with burnout. And this was particularly in my last job. Before becoming a coach years ago, I was an executive and a chief of staff to a CEO at a global nonprofit. And I was about 2.5 years into that term. And as all of you can imagine, like very high-paced, challenging job where I worked nonstop, living in the Bay Area. I had that lifestyle, all of it. And I decided during the pandemic, right at the start of the pandemic, to move out of the city and get closer to nature. So I moved to Bend, Oregon. And a day after arriving here, I was literally in bed, couldn't get out of bed in the morning, like stuck in bed. Felt like there was an elephant sitting on my chest. I could barely breathe. I had zero energy to even sit up, zero energy to even read, let alone have a conversation with somebody. It was quite paralyzing, and it kind of came from nowhere. And I had seen 3 doctors in the first week I was here and tested negative for COVID 3 times. And all 3 doctors had no idea what was wrong with me. I was as healthy as can be. And finally, a few weeks later, this continued. I was now out of work for 3 weeks in bed, basically paralyzed, and went to another doctor, and they asked me about anxiety, and they asked me about my job, and they asked me about stress and overwhelm, and it all just came pouring out. It's like, oh, this is an energy thing. This isn't a physical thing. Like physically, I'm quite healthy, but emotionally, I am completely drained. So that was an eye opener for me to see it from that perspective. And granted, I was working for an organization I absolutely loved. I loved their mission. I loved the CEO that I was serving. I loved my team members. Nobody was making me work 60, 70 hours a week. Like I took it upon myself to do the best job I could to pursue this mission. And I thought that meant working my ass off nonstop. So I worked constantly, and I just want to say I own that. I recognize that was on me. Nobody made me do that. That wasn't a part of the culture necessarily. So with that said, 5 weeks went by and I came pretty close to the certification that I was pursuing for coaching. This was at the point where I was kind of looking into coaching a little bit and exploring it. And I was about to embark on a week-long coaching certification where luckily it was the start of COVID. So they decided to do it all virtual. So I just had to be on a computer screen. But, it's about 6 weeks into it at this point. I'm still not working. I still feel terrible. And I'm dreading going into this week-long certification. And I made myself do it. And the first day, it was exhausting. It was terrible. I barely made it through. And as the week went on, I started gaining more energy. I started feeling slightly better. I started being more present. And I realized, well, I'm regenerating my energy because I'm doing something that I'm super passionate about and I care about. And I feel like this is my future. So I went through that entire week. And by the end, I was back to health. Not 100%, but I was feeling a heck of a lot better. So I went back to my full-time day job as well. And within a week of going back to work, completely sick again, completely burned out, just lost it back where I started. So it became really clear to me, I'm burned out because I'm not doing the work that I need to be doing. I'm burned out because the work that I'm doing is completely depleting me of energy and I'm putting 100% of myself into it. And as soon as I started shifting some of that spaciousness and energy into coaching and building my future business, that's when I would get out of bed and feeling better and back to health. So it was a real interesting experience. And over the next couple of months, I decided to, transition a lot of the time I was spending on my day job and cut it back to the minimum. So I went from working 60, 70 hours a week for this company to 40. And you know what? Nobody noticed. Nobody, not even my CEO, my boss, noticed that I wasn't working like a maniac anymore. And it's because I was being productive and efficient because I had more space to do what I loved, which was regenerating my energy. So I built this business on the side as I was still working full time. And after 6 months, I fully transitioned into what I'm doing now and have not experienced burnout since. In fact, I've experienced a huge spike in energy just from being in alignment with what I'm supposed to be doing and what I'm super passionate about in life. So that's, just kind of a quick overview of my close relationship with burnout. And I'm excited to share with you kind of, some of the things that I experienced, some of the things that you might relate to through burnout, how to avoid it, what it is, and how to get through it, and eventually to renewal so that you can avoid it altogether moving forward.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Mary, for sharing so honestly and candidly about your experience. That's bold and brave. So thank you. And if anyone is resonating with that, I know I sure was. Anything that stood out to you, feel free to mention what maybe symptoms felt like for you when you're burnout. I love what Mary said about being in alignment with what you were supposed to be doing gave you more energy. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but I heard you say that sentiment, and I think that's really powerful. Yeah, when I'm stuck in tedium or not set on a goal or in alignment with a company or a business or a project or whatever it is, I'm just exhausted. I feel tired. I feel, sluggish, procrastination. unfocused comes in, and you were talking about like you scaled back 20, 30 hours and you were more productive. Not only did people not notice, but then you became more productive, which I think is just very, very helpful to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So someone asked earlier, and you touched on this too, you said you were feeling anxious. So I was curious, when you were going to the doctor, when you were sharing about that, you're talking about anxiety. So we talk about anxiety and not being motivated. Are these symptoms of burnout? Are there other symptoms of burnout? Can we see some things maybe before they get to that stage that are other symptoms that are maybe like little yellow flags and not red flags yet?
Yeah, great question. And if it's okay, I'd like to take it one step back and just kind of define what burnout is. So we're all working from a shared definition of it, because we all kind of have our own understanding and relationship with it. So burnout is really a state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion. That's what it is. And it's caused typically by prolonged stress, overwhelm, overwork. It can occur in various settings. We typically think of burnout in terms of workplace, but it happens at universities and schools. It happens in our personal life, in our relationships as well. So it's not just a temporary feeling of being tired or stressed, but it's chronic. It's a chronic condition that significantly impacts our lives and our overall just well-being and ability to function. So typically burnout is characterized with symptoms that are emotional exhaustion, along with cynicism, reduced, kind of productivity, and then physical symptoms as well. So this can be any combination of maybe feeling, emotionally drained, like I described, just really overwhelmed and depleted, just having a hard time getting through your daily tasks and work. Some people lean more on the side of cynicism, where they just develop a very negative, cynical, kind of detached attitude from work and other activities that they once found really enjoyable. And that can lead to a detachment from people that are associated with those things. A lot of people feel a decreased sense of achievement in your abilities. And you might just start feeling like, why am I doing this? This is pointless. I'm not making a difference anymore. And then finally, physical symptoms. Like as I described, my physical symptoms were quite severe. Like my body was screaming, stop doing everything until you fix this. Like it literally kept me in bed, completely depleted of basically most movement in my life. So physical symptoms are real. It can also influence your sleep. A lot of people get headaches. A lot of people have digestive issues. So there's a whole, array of physical health problems that can be associated with burnout as well. So burnout's often associated with chronic stress, prolonged overwhelm, feeling unsupported, undervalued, and it could really be caused from a number of things. But what I want to make clear is that burnout is not busyness. And I think that's where sometimes we get confused. Like in a world with constant busyness, we're always all busy, like true productivity, that requires really mindful intention. And anybody can be busy, but it takes real deliberate effort to be productive. So working hard without an aim or a purpose, like that is a clear path to burnout. But if we're working really hard towards like clear goals that are meaningful to us, like that's when we feel fulfillment. So if you're working really hard and long hours and you feel like you're not accomplishing enough at work anymore, and yet you're getting more and more stressed out, like that is a red flag. That is the main red flag that most people see first. So with that said, like burnout doesn't mean necessarily that you need to get rest. It means that you need to take a look at your energy, what's depleting it, and find ways to regenerate it, and then revisit your entire map, right? Like revisit the map and plot a new course if you need to. So that might mean plot a new course within your company. That might mean plot a new course to another career, another job like I did. But burnout is, I look at it now like looking back, as actually a gift in my life, because I gained so much clarity from it. And I learned for the first time in my life how to actually understand my stress and where it's coming from, and recognize when I'm starting to get stressed and what those triggers are. And then I learned ways of how to manage through that stress and eventually avoid it altogether. So if you're feeling like, oh gosh, I'm totally burned out, or I'm headed towards burnout, know that you're not alone. Know that this is completely normal. Know that you will get through it, and know that you will actually learn through it, because it's happening for a reason, and that is for your growth, right? So I don't know if I completely answered your question, Hunter, but I just wanted to get kind of clear on what, the definition of burnout is. So we kind of are all working from the same place.
I think, thank you so much for that. It's so important. And I really appreciate you saying just now that it's, when you were saying it is a gift, that burnout was a gift because it got you to where you are. It makes me think of this phrase that, as you were saying, for growth as well, that pain is the touchstone to growth, and burnout involves pain, and it involves a huge learning curve. And something you mentioned too that I think is really fascinating is the concept that one of the symptoms is cynicism. I hadn't really thought about it that way before. I think a lot about exhaustion, lack of energy, uninterested, but cynicism is a very sneaky symptom because it can come up on you and just be like, oh, this job isn't worth my time, or or they don't know what they're doing, or because it has this level of I know better, entitlement sort of stuff can come up for me, at least when I'm being cynical. But to really peel that back, that's insecurity, in my case. And if I'm insecure about something, well, maybe there's some more investigating to do. And I think that's a really, really helpful, aha moment, to use an Oprah line, for me to be like, oh yeah, so that could also be a sign of burnout. I had never thought of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Burnout can be sneaky. Like sometimes it just slaps you in the face like it did for me. Other times it's a sneaker. Like it comes up slowly over time. And I'm sure all of the signs were there. And I was just so focused on moving forward in work that I wasn't looking outside of that, and I didn't see it. So
Right.
if you know what the signs and symptoms are, then you can start identifying them as they come up. And then you can start your journey towards healing and moving through it a lot faster. So maybe should I talk about some of the typical signs and symptoms of burnout? Would that be
Yeah, I
helpful?
think that's a great idea. Absolutely.
Okay, because a lot of the signs are different for different people, right? But I want to kind of group them into physical, emotional, behavioral. Those are the three kind of main signs. And physical, we've already talked about, right? The chronic fatigue, the exhaustion, the feeling of being drained, sleep disturbances, weakened immune system. Like you might start just getting a lot more colds than you used to. Changes in appetite and weight is another physical symptom. And then it tends to live in our gastrointestinal area too. So you might start feeling like stomach and digestion problems there. So take note of those physical symptoms and know that those symptoms can be for a lot of different things and not necessarily just burnout, but know that they can contribute to burnout. The emotional symptoms, cynicism, like we talked about, but there's also this feeling or sense of hopelessness. Like the deeper we get in that burnout hole, the more pessimistic we get in believing that things are not going to improve, right? Like we just lose our hope, and that leads to a huge lack of motivation and feeling disinterested or apathetic about, tasks or activities that we may have once found really enjoyable or found, neutral. Like I have to get this stuff done at work. It's fine, great. But now we're saying, I can't do this anymore. I just absolutely can't stand it. Like your mindset changes a little bit. And you can also become really impatient, irritable, detached from other people and the work that you're doing. So pay attention to like the emotional symptoms and how those are feeling in your body. And then finally, the behavioral symptoms, withdrawal from responsibilities. Like that is the number one. Like we start to avoid or procrastinate things that we no longer want to do. And obviously that impacts our productivity. So typically our productivity decreases, and it's not from not working the same amount of hours. It's not from not being as busy as we always were. It's because our mindset's not there. So we're not as effective. We're not as fast. We're not as productive. We tend to start neglecting self-care when we're in burnout and start ignoring our own needs and well-being and put whatever the other thing is in front of that always. And that can make us isolate, that can make us withdraw from social interactions, and that can also make us hyper-focused on typically work or whatever the cause is, but overworking. So ironically, some people respond to burnout by working even longer hours because they feel like they're not being productive enough and accomplishing enough. So they just continue to work more and more and more, which leads to this vicious cycle because they're not being any more productive. They're actually being less productive. So it's important to recognize these physical, the emotional, and the behavioral symptoms because we all tend to get, some type of mix of all of those. And we can prevent burnout from worsening if we're able to identify these early and often. So if you're experiencing several of these, or somebody else who might, you might want to get some professional support. Go talk to your doctor or healthcare provider and just check in with them and see if this is something that could be burnout. And that's when you can start managing it, right? Like once you know that, yep, this is burnout, it's not something else, it's not another medical condition that needs to be treated, then you can go in and start doing the work of renewal and self-care and well-being and get back on path through burnout, past burnout.
Yeah. Like you said, it could be another medical thing going on and it's contributing to your sense of burnout, to one sense of burnout. And we have to, like you said, have self-care, which we might be lacking during burnout, taking care of ourselves, whether it's a medical thing, whether that's a mental, emotional situation or a physical situation. We can treat those things with the help of our medical team. And then, like you said, we can do the work. Then we're like, oh, okay. So I got to this stage, or I'm at this stage right now, and now I want to make some changes that are affecting me with my work life because stuff keeps coming up. It makes me think about when you said once you got back to work, you were like, bam, like you were back in burnout mode because there was still something else going on, right? And that was the burnout, was the underlying issue. And we're getting a lot of comments in the chat. There's a lot of this that's resonating with folks. Someone mentioned these are really great reminders and awarenesses. Thanks for the ad and validation that I am overworking nonstop. And someone was like, I feel attacked, LOL, which that means it resonates because we are, we identify with what you're saying here. And someone mentioned, a few people have been curious about in the chat about how burnout and depression, and is depression a symptom of burnout? Can burnout cause depression? How are they different? And on a related note, someone also mentioned, which you touched on too, using methods of shutting down which is similar to isolating and detaching as a coping mechanism. And I feel like these are all related. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Burnout and depression are related, but distinct conditions. So while they do share some similarities, they have different causes, different symptoms, and different treatment approaches. So let's kind of understand that relationship a little bit. So burnout is a state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion, usually resulting from chronic and prolonged stress and overwhelm and overwork. And depression is a mood disorder, and it's characterized by persistent feelings of, sadness or hopelessness, loss of interest. And it's caused by a really complex interplay of, genetic, environmental, psychological factors. So the relationship between burnout and depression, like while they're separate conditions, they can overlap, they can influence each other. They can play off each other. So prolonged burnout can take a toll on our mental health, which can potentially lead to the development of depression. And feelings of just constant exhaustion and frustration and dissatisfaction with our work or our life, like that can also contribute to the onset of depressive symptoms. So in some cases, burnout and depression may coexist, which makes it challenging to distinguish between the two based on symptoms alone. So, that's why I kind of recommend to people, like, if you feel like you might be depressed, if you feel like you might be experiencing burnout, it's always good to seek professional help just to get a proper diagnosis so you understand where you're at, so you know what you're working with so that you can get through it, right? So I would say, the cause for burnout is usually linked to chronic stress, whereas depression can be triggered by so many things, including genetics, life events, personality traits, like all kinds of things. And while both burnout and depression like can lead to like that exhaustion and that fatigue and that hopelessness, like individuals experiencing burnout, they still might have periods of happiness and contentment outside of that environment that they feel burned out. Whereas depression is pretty pervasive and enduring, right? It's pretty constant. So I think, if you or someone are experiencing these symptoms, like the first thing to do is just get a diagnosis, go talk to a healthcare provider, go see your doctor. Early intervention and appropriate treatment, like that can lead to much better outcomes over the long term. So there's so much overlap between burnout and depression and anxiety and like all kinds of things. They all play together, right? And you don't need to figure it all out yourself. Unless you're a doctor, unless you're trained in all of this, unless you have the expertise. And even so, it's still good to ask for help and just kind of get a diagnosis, understand what you're working with. Because once you accept it, once you recognize it and then accept it, then you can start moving forward. But if you're not accepting that I'm living with this condition or I'm living in this state, then you're not really going to change and you're not going to do anything to improve and you're not going to do anything differently to get different results. So that's really the first step, is get a diagnosis and then really accept that this is what I'm going through. And then you can start putting together a plan for renewal.
Yeah. I like how you said, unless you're a doctor, but, doctors need doctors too, right? Like we all need help. We could all benefit from help, from professional opinions. Therapists have therapists, doctors have doctors. Right. And like some advice that I got a long time ago, which I try to repeat to myself regularly, is after asking for help, what's the next step? I should ask for more help, because I could always use it. And it can be hard. It's a very vulnerable act to ask for help. And it's just, it takes gentleness and persistence from myself to do those things. And I love too that you mentioned that acceptance. It's so important. We have to get the information and then acceptance, and then we can move forward. We can make a plan. We can, make a career shift. We can, whatever it is. But acceptance is so important. Yes, Cassie is shouting out, asking for help is sometimes the biggest hurdle. I know, Cassie, I'm here with you. But just being kind to ourselves, I think, is really important. And going back to your recommendation of self-care, Mary. So friends, we have 30 minutes left. Can you believe it? How time flies. So if you have questions, now is the time. If not now, when, my friends, when? So ask them often, ask them early, because Mary would love to answer your questions. If you need some motivation, Francis also thinks you should ask some questions. So here is a path to renewal. It's Francis as well.
For sure.
So moving on to shifting gears a little bit, somebody asked, I've explored different avenues of how to deal with burnout, but it feels like it doesn't really go away. How long can it take to recover from burnout?
Really, really good. Recuperating from burnout is a gradual process, I'll say, and it varies so much from person to person. So the duration of recovery, it depends on a lot of factors, including like the severity of it, like how bad are you burned out, the causes of it, the support that you have available, and then just your inner willingness to make the necessary changes and the mindset shift. So in some cases, burnout can be resolved within a few weeks or months, while for others, it might take 6 months or longer. So there are some, major considerations that may affect the duration of burnout, and maybe I'll just think through some of these and share. And I think the first one is what we already talked about, just acknowledgement, right? Accepting that you're experiencing burnout and acknowledging the need for change. That's the first, crucial step. And avoiding or denying it, that's just obviously going to prolong the recovery process. And also want to make clear that accepting burnout doesn't mean being okay with it, right? It doesn't mean, it's fine. This is just the way it is. It's not like that. It means I accept that I'm currently experiencing burnout, but the words that you use matter, right? The thoughts that you have matter. The feelings that you have matter. All of that impacts how you act, how you respond to situations, which then create the experience that you have. So I want to make sure that when you're talking about this, it's not, oh, I have burnout, nothing is ever going to get better, but I accept that I have it. Like, no, that's not what it is. It's, I'm currently experiencing burnout, and I know that I will get through this. And if you want to get through it even faster, start looking for the message behind this sign. Because we get, our health is basically a sign that something is off. Something is off in our body. So what is that? What do I need to learn from it so that I can move past it? So make sure that you kind of take that approach when you're accepting this condition. It's not permanent. It doesn't define who I am. It's not even a label. It's just something that I'm currently experiencing. And that's how we think about it. So once you kind of think about it that way, then you can say, okay, I know I'm going to get through this. So what lifestyle changes do I need to make? And we start thinking about making sustainable lifestyle changes, such as improving our sleep hygiene or incorporating more regular exercise, practicing stress reduction techniques. Like all of these things can speed up the process. Seeking support, obviously, is going to have a huge impact on how long we recover through burnout. So utilize the support of your friends, your family, professionals, therapists, coaches, counselors, doctors, whoever you have available to you. During burnout is the best time to ask for support, because I know firsthand people want to help you. And I also caution that everybody will give you advice. Everybody will, doesn't matter if they've been through it or not, if they know anything about it, everybody wants you to feel better. So they think they know what's best for you, and they will tell you that. So just know that, your best friend might not have the perfect plan for you, but that they care about you enough that they're sharing. So make your own decisions, right? Like reach out for support, share what you need to, ask for what you need to, but also it's okay to set boundaries on what you ask for. It's okay to tell your best friend, hey, I'm experiencing burnout and I don't want or need advice right now. I have a professional for that. What I need is support from my best friend, and just to know that you're there and I can call you when I need to. And we can just talk like friends and not focus on this burnout. Like put boundaries in place, ask for exactly what you need, be really clear on what you need from whom, so that you don't get stuck in that cycle of a million people telling you what to do all day long, because that's not very helpful. So what else affects the duration of burnout? Let's see, your commitment to change, your willingness and commitment to make changes in your life. Like change is hard. Change is really hard. It doesn't happen overnight. So we can't just say one day, okay, I accept that I'm experiencing burnout and tomorrow things are going to be completely back to normal. Like we all know that's not how it works. Behavior change takes time, and we need to change some behaviors in our life And the faster we can commit to the changes that we want to make, and the more drive and enthusiasm we have around actually putting in that work, faster you're going to go through recovery, right? But the severity of burnout matters, like it doesn't matter how committed you are and what plan you have in place and how much you're willing to change. Like if you're going through severe burnout like I did, like you just have to accept that it's going to take a little bit of time. There's no way you're going to be like in bed completely exhausted with zero energy to even sit up or read a book and then the next day be 100% back. Like it's going to be gradual. So recognize that, prepare yourself for that, and celebrate it. Celebrate every step of the way. Celebrate that I got out of bed today. I went on my first Zoom call in 6 weeks, right? And then I had to go right back to bed. But the next day I was able to be on calls for 2 hours. And the next week, I was able to start going back to work at reduced hours. Like celebrate those milestones and see them as progress, because that momentum is going to drive you to keep going instead of falling back into that place. And then I think, it's just essential to be patient and compassionate with yourself during the recovery process. That's going to be a huge determining factor of how long you go through it. So the recovery from burnout, it's not always linear, right? Unfortunately, and there's going to be ups and downs along the way, just like life. But be open to adapting your approach. Be open to getting the support that you need. And if you find that burnout is just persisting or worsening, despite all of your efforts to address it, then ask for more help and expand your support network, right? And remember that seeking help is a sign of strength always, and a step towards a better well-being. And also remember how you would respond to somebody in your life if they came for help. You would be more than happy to help them and support them. In fact, you would hope that they go to you for support and help. So know that everybody that you're approaching feels the exact same way about you. And hopefully that makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, that initial hurdle of asking for help, like, oh, I don't want to be a bother or any of that stuff that might come up. You're like, yeah, if a friend came to me or if a colleague came to me, I would be honored that they're asking for my help, and I would be more than happy to help them, because being of service to other people, it also helps us feel good too. So there was so much great stuff in there. I love earlier when you were saying looking for the message behind the sign, when we got to peel back that onion, get that information, see what's underneath. I also love that you mentioned that it's not going to last forever. Burnout, the old phrase, "this too shall pass," came to mind. I have a little magnet on my fridge with a little dog that says, "this toot shall pass." So it keeps it light in this house, and small victories are so important. You mentioned about small victories. You can't expect to go from 0 to 100 in a day. It's going to be these small steps. And so we have about 20 minutes left, and we've been getting a lot of great questions in the chat, and I would love to pepper some of those in as well. And on the topic of small victories, Duncan asked a question earlier. Duncan asked, coming from looking at from a work perspective, what are some ways to feel small victories from a process that oftentimes doesn't have any concrete rewards? Whether that's when you're working, maybe some folks are in a job search and that can feel kind of hopeless sometimes if they're pivoting. What are these other small victories that can help us when we might be feeling like overwhelmed or all is lost?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the way that I like to lead my life and have found really beneficial post burnout is just have self-awareness to notice when you've made progress in some way, right? It doesn't have to be, I completed this huge project at work and now I go out for drinks with my colleagues. It doesn't have to be that big. It could be, I said I was going to go to a yoga class this week and I did. I'm grateful for that, right? It could be that I spent the whole day keeping myself in check and making sure that I said no when I could not take on anything else in my life. It could be celebrating, I had the courage to ask for help today. I had the courage to ask for the support that I needed. Or I finally let go of control and delegated something that somebody on my team could easily take on and could take off my plate. So just have self-awareness around who you want to be and how you have to be that person, right? So start with defining that. Like, who do you want to be at work? You know, if we're talking specifically in the work environment, who do I show up as at work? Know who that person is. And then all day long, just kind of have the awareness to say, am I being that person? Am I being that present person who is 100% focused with the person that I'm with in the moment? Am I being that strategic mind that I need to get through all of this work? Like, am I being that kind, compassionate human that makes everybody feel included and a part of the work that we're doing? Like, whoever you want to be at work, know what characteristics define that and check yourself against that. And that's a really easy way to, throughout the day, celebrate. Because you can easily say, oh, I just got out of that meeting and I was 100% present and focused and I turned off all my distraction device and all the things. And those little things add up. And the reason they add up is because when you think positively, it changes how you feel. And when you feel a certain emotion, if it's a positive emotion, then that's going to dictate how you move through the rest of the day, right? Like, you take that with you. It has a ripple impact, not just in your life and your day, but the people around you. We're constantly influencing people around us. So it's in our best interest, and everybody that we interact with and everybody at our workplace, that we are celebrating and having gratitude for small wins, because that puts us in the right mindset and the right positivity to keep moving forward in that light. So when I say celebrate the small wins, like, I'm talking tiny. And the easiest, like, fastest way that you can start this type of practice, if you don't have one, maybe some of you already have a gratitude practice. Maybe you wake up in the morning or when you go to bed at night, you find some things to be grateful for. Amazing. If you already do that, fantastic, because gratitude is the feeling that's harmonious with the experience of abundance. And burnout is the experience of scarcity. Don't have enough time, don't have enough energy, don't have enough support, don't have enough resources. But we want to change that mindset to abundance of I can and I will eventually, right? So if you have a gratitude practice, add on to it. Maybe instead of just being so broad, what am I grateful for today? What am I grateful for today about myself? What am I grateful for today about work in general? What am I grateful for today in my personal life? Like, start bringing more structure to that so you can get more specific. And another simple way to just kind of start celebrating small wins is, again, think of 3 words to define who you want to be at work. What are those 3 words? And if you want to take it one step further, set an alarm on your distraction device. And every, twice a day, 3 times a day, put a label on that alarm. So the alarm goes off and you see your 3 words on your phone. And that is a sure trigger, or just kind of like a nudge to say, okay, am I being present? Am I being strategic? Am I being kind? Whatever those words are for you. And you just kind of evaluate yourself against it. And if you're not, you're like, I'm glad I got that reminder. I'm going to shift into that now. Or, yeah, I've been doing great at that all day long. I'm going to celebrate. So celebration doesn't necessarily have to be, go get drinks with colleagues. It could just be, I'm going to celebrate by feeling really good right now. And I'm going to put a smile on my face. And that could be enough. It doesn't have to be tangible. It doesn't have to be physical. It has to be emotional. You have to feel it, because your feelings are what dictate your actions, not necessarily your thoughts. So that's where I'll stop with small victories. I hope that's helpful.
Mary took us to church. Yes. Yes, so much in there. Oh my gosh. I love all of everything you're saying. Gratitude practices are incredibly helpful for me. They've taken many different shapes and forms. Sometimes, I'm a fan of mindfulness and meditation, and, that can be taking 2 minutes during sitting and just thinking about what I'm grateful for. I've also gone through practices where I actually write it out or type it out. And I'll send it to people that I trust and that I confide in, and they'll send me one back. And it can be small things. Someone said getting out of bed today is something to be grateful for. Yes, that could be about your energy. That could be about your mobility. That could be about your mental health. It could be about all of these things. Being employed, or being looking for a job, or being able to enjoy a cup of water. It's these simple things, like you said, it can be so small. Or I also love too when you're talking about those 3 words of who do you want to be at work, and what I'm inferring for that is like, what are our core values, right? Who do we want to be? What are our core values? You mentioned, empathy, patience, being present, self-care, gratitude, positive. All of these things. And then we can look at, how was I being positive in that last meeting? I love that you called this the distraction device. Love that. Yes, absolutely true. And I am a big fan of the reminders as well for those things. And one that I've had for years now, that I've just set it so it kind of comes up randomly. It's not at the same time every time. And it is, did I make that choice from fear or love? And that's one for me, because like, ooh, did I just make that out of fear? It could be a tiny bit. Fear is like cynicism. It can be very sneaky, it can just sneak in. It's like, ooh, I was a little afraid of saying the wrong thing, so I made that choice, right? Or disappointing someone. Or was I being compassionate? Oh, wow, yeah, that I showed humility by saying I didn't know something. That's actually an act of love, in my opinion. So, these little reminders that Mary offers up, I think, are incredibly valuable, and they can take different shapes, different forms, and whatever those little reminders are. What are yours today, Mary? What little ones pop up for you on your distraction device?
Oh, my words?
Yeah.
My 3 words? Yeah, my 3 words right now. And I change them,
Sure.
sometimes every couple of weeks, sometimes every couple of months. Like, this is not a one-time exercise. You want to keep going back and making sure that they're relevant. But right now, mine are being completely present with people, compassion, and also focus was the 3rd one. Really
Mm,
focused. So that's
mm.
how I'm currently evaluating myself.
I love that. I love that. How often for you does it come up? Is it once a day? Is it a couple times a day? What, twice a day?
I just have it twice a day,
Yeah.
right? I have it like around lunchtime and then after work as I'm transitioning from kind of work mode to back to life mode. Because I want to make sure that it kind of sticks. But for some people, that's too much, right? Like even if it's just once a day. And if that's distracting, then just put a post-it note somewhere. Put a post-it note on your bathroom mirror with those 3 words.
Yeah.
Look at them every time you look in the mirror and just do a 30-second evaluation and really, feel that gratitude for when you're in alignment with that, and notice how you feel when you're not. And getting back to Hunter, you so brilliantly said, like, am I making this decision out of fear or love? Like, that is so powerful. And when you're in alignment with the person that you want to be, when you're in alignment with these values or words that you defined, you feel that in your heart, right?
Mhm.
You feel that. That's love. And that is very elevating. And as opposed to when you're not in alignment with that and you're more in the fear-based mode, like you feel really constricted and tight, right? Like how many of you have tight neck and shoulder muscles? Like physical sign, feeling constricted and not elevated and expansive. So we want to make sure a lot of it's about alignment with who we want to be in life, who we are, what our purpose is my work aligning with that? Are my actions aligning with that? And you'll see that when they do, you are just more in this expansive state of love and happiness and fulfillment. And when you're not, when you're headed towards burnout, like everything's tense and your jaw tightens up and maybe you get TMJ like I did back then. And like you literally feel the tenseness. So when you feel that tense constriction, that's fear. That's fear creeping in, and you need to listen and you need to talk to that fear and understand, why are you here? What are you here to tell me? not just get out of here. I don't want you in my life, because then it's just going to keep coming back and
Right.
biting you on the ass, right? It's like a puppy. Like, they're going to come and tell you they need something.
Yeah.
And if you just keep ignoring it, then Francis is going to come back harder every
Oh,
time.
sure. And I push it away. He thinks we're playing the game now, so he's going to come back even, but now his teeth are out.
Exactly. You don't want to get to the point where fear has its teeth out. Like, you want to have enough self-awareness to notice, I'm feeling constricted, I'm acting out of fear.
Yeah.
What do you need to tell me? How can I move through this so I can get back into love?
That's right. Yeah. And for me, I've adapted a phrase that's I make it a little gentler, which is keep it simple, sweetheart. Because I think we all know the mean version, and it's like, this can be kind, and that's why I like just fear love, because it's just like, for me, like when we were talking about it and you were talking about love, like I felt butterflies. I felt my chest opening up. I was like, I'm suddenly like in love with this conversation, and then when we were talking about fear, I started to remember my own TMJ and anxiety. It's like, it does show up in the body, like you're talking about, and it emanates through everything we do. So I love these check-ins. Okay, we only have 10 minutes left, if you can believe it or not. This is such a wonderful conversation. And I want to make sure we get to talk about renewal, right? And we're in it, but now let's just go straight on to it. So someone asked, what are some practices or strategies I can do at work when I find myself feeling depleted or overwhelmed? And could you expand on the concept of renewal?
Yeah, excellent question. Like, it's really important to have those coping strategies in place, ready to go when we feel the stress coming on. And the simplest, place to start is to make sure that you're taking short breaks every day, right? Like, whether you're working in an office or you're working remotely, it doesn't matter. Like, we can't just sit in our chairs for 8 or 10 hours straight and focus. Like, we don't have the mental capacity to do that. So my kind of rule of thumb is once an hour, stand up. And if you have a standing desk, once an hour, go and walk. And this could be for 1 minute or 2 minutes, but we need that time for our brain to just rest a little bit. So step away from your desk for a few minutes, go stick your head outside, get some fresh air, some sunlight on your face, stretch a little bit, and that will help increase your focus when you return back to your tasks. So once an hour, take a short break. That is the easiest way to start reducing stress. Another really important component of stress, and we talked about how it impacts the body and we can feel the body. The best way to regenerate ourselves is to get more oxygen into our blood system, right? So how do we do that? We breathe. And when we're constricted,
what is this breathing you mentioned, Mary? Tell me more.
Well, honestly, Hunter, most of us don't know how to breathe properly.
No, we hold our breath all the time.
That's right. That's right. We're constricted because we're acting in fear. So we feel it. We feel it up here in our chest. But proper breathing is we're breathing all the way down into our diaphragm. Like, how many times a day do you take a deep breath and you feel it in your stomach? If you're not, it's incredibly cleansing and it's incredibly powerful to energize yourself and to help your body go through those energetic kind of emotions from stress. So deep breathing exercises can help you relax, help you reduce stress. And it can be as easy as just taking slow, deep, intentional breaths, holding it like literally inhale on a count of 4, feel it go all the way down into your stomach, hold it at the bottom for 4, and then release it slowly for 4, and then hold it for 4 at the top. Like, that's called box breathing. 4, 4, 4, 4. Super easy. You can do more research on that, but repeat this process whenever you feel overwhelmed. So how do you do that at work? Go in the bathroom if nobody's there. Go in a meeting room or a conference room if nobody's there. Go outside and take a quick walk. Nobody's going to pay attention to your deep breathing. But breathing can really help alleviate that sense of overwhelm in that minute. So aside from that, like, prioritization is huge, right? Like, when we start getting stressed, we start looking at everything we have to do and get completely unfocused. So identifying the most critical thing that I need to get done today. What do I need to work on now? Like start breaking those projects into smaller manageable tasks and put your work plan together and have a clear understanding and organization of how you're going to get through all of this work and when it's going to happen. And every night before you turn off the computer and stop working, take a look at what's coming up for tomorrow so you're not surprised, and say, what are the 3 things I need to move forward tomorrow? What do I need to focus on tomorrow? And make sure your calendar aligns with that. Make sure you have space in your calendar to accomplish all of that. And don't let the little things bother you, because you're not going to do all of them. You can't. We're never, ever going to get through our entire to-do list. So get rid of your to-do list. Like, just throw it out the window. A long list of stuff to do is stressful. Like, take that and organize it into your calendar so you know when you have to do what. And that'll be a sure sign of, well, I don't have time to do all this. So I got to reprioritize, and I got to delegate stuff, and I got to go tell my boss this is not going to get done on time. But you stay ahead of it by staying organized, right? So use whatever organizational tools you need. And then, also at work, limit your distractions. Of course, turn off notifications, take your distraction device and put it in a drawer, all of those things. Set boundaries. Avoid overcommitting yourself to taking on excessive work. Feel realistic about what you can accomplish. And if somebody asks you to do something and you don't have anything on your plate, it's okay to say no. And you can say no in a very kind and respectful way of, I'd love to help you with this and have this other priority. So which one is more important? Where would you like for me to focus now? Because one of them has to shift. Just be honest and transparent about where you're at and what you're capable of doing. So those are just, a few things. Obviously, create a calming workspace for yourself. Make sure you're comfortable in your environment. Listen to light music if that helps you. Practice mindfulness. You can meditate at your desk without anybody even knowing it. Like, you don't necessarily have to close your eyes to do any of these things. It's really just about bringing yourself back in the present and not being distracted or overwhelmed by what's around you, because your strength comes from within. That's where you're going to find your strength always.
Yes, Mary. And, meditation can be 1 minute long. I can be hard on myself, like, oh, I didn't meditate because I didn't sit for 20 minutes. It's like, well, maybe 1 minute is all I needed in this moment. And that is enough. And that is a small win that we can, put on our gratitude list to tie it all full circle. So we only have a couple of minutes left. There's so much stuff in there that was so great. Please keep an eye out for the rewatch link, friends, because this is just packed full of gold in here. I want to say about boundaries, something that was said to me by my first therapist, who I love very deeply, was so great. She told me that, Hunter, the creation of boundaries is a loving act, to keep it simple for myself, because if I'm, like you said, if I'm not being realistic about my capabilities of my time management, that is not a loving thing to do for someone, because then I might just disappoint them and invariably stress myself out because I've overcommitted, which I am the king, or I used to be the king of doing. And now I've, learned how to practice healthy boundaries. So thank you for that reminder. So in these last couple of minutes, Mary, someone asked, giving yourself grace and time after going through burnout is difficult. How do you, Mary, give yourself that grace?
Great question. So since you asked personally, how do I'll take this from my perspective. I have very strong routines that I have put in place that have helped me be more focused on my self-care and well-being. So back when I was, working the grind and working too much, like, as you can imagine, I didn't get to the gym enough. I didn't cook as much as I needed to eat healthy because I didn't have time. I didn't spend time with people that I cared about and loved. Like, work was up here and everything else was out of balance down here. So I've made a real effort to kind of evaluate my whole life and bring everything into balance. And that took real strong routines to keep me in that place. So I have a morning routine where I wake up, I meditate, I do some visioning, I get a little bit of movement and stretching, I get sunlight on my face, I nourish myself. So, That's a practice. I also started doing yoga very intensely. And yoga is not just exercise. Yoga like prepares us for life is what it is, right? Like if you hold a really difficult yoga pose in the moment and not have that fear strike in and just settle into it and accept it, that prepares you when you're in that meeting and something comes out of nowhere and shocks you. You don't immediately go to fear. You stay in that space and you're calm and grounded. So I do a lot of yoga these days, a lot of meditation. I'm also very particular and intentional about how I fuel my body. Like nutrition is super important because food is fuel. That's all it is. It gives us energy. So what you consume is what you get out of it. If you eat very high energetic food that is grown in the earth, plant-based, organic, lack of chemicals, like just really healthy, unprocessed food, like do that for a week and see how much different you feel. And then go eat sugar and processed foods and all this, other crap that we call food for a week and see the difference in your energy. Yeah. Like that had a huge, huge impact for me, is just being focused on what I eat, being focused on, the mindfulness, the yoga, the meditation. But another part of this is purpose. So I got really clear on why am I here? What's my why? What is my contribution to this world? And made sure that I aligned my career and every decisions that I make in my life around that, so that I'm always in alignment with who I want to be. So I could go on forever. I know we're out of time. So I'll end there.
That's absolutely beautiful. And it makes, to wrap up, makes me think of the old proverb, the saying about, if there's two wolves, whether it's fear or love or processed food or unprocessed food, which one do you want to survive, to thrive? It's the one you feed, right?
That's right.
So thank you for feeding that loving wolf today, Mary. I really appreciate you. This has been absolutely fantastic. Please come back and do this again with us. We could clearly talk for a full another hour. How can folks stay connected with you? What's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, probably the easiest way is to just find me on LinkedIn, or you can just go to my website, maryostafi.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for going 2 minutes over. I appreciate you and everyone on the call. Thank you so much. And have a great day. Thank you, everyone, for joining and all of your participation, your vulnerability in the chat, and your questions. Absolutely fantastic. We look forward to having you at the next one. So practice that self-care. This is a win. Put this on your list today. You showed up for this. This is a win. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Hunter. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Have a good day, y'all.
Bye.
Bye. Francis says bye.
Oh, bye, Francis.